Hey, what's up, everybody? Chris here, and I want to pose a question. Is it possible to make a good movie, a good follow up movie to a classic film? And so I'm thinking specifically, really, right now about Indiana Jones and about The Matrix, even though that's a little bit dicier because it's already had a couple of sequels, but we've got an upcoming Indiana Jones movie, an upcoming Matrix movie. And an upcoming Ghostbusters movie. And so again, the question remains, is it possible to actually make a good sequel to a classic film or classic films, plural? Let's talk a little bit about that. Hey, as always, if you're enjoying the content, please be sure to give this video a thumbs up and please be sure to subscribe. So in my mind, there is one example of a classic movie that has had a follow-up that is as good to it, or maybe even better, but let's not go that far. We'll say as good. And what I'm referencing here specifically is movies that came out decades ago and are now being revisited, either for nostalgia purposes because studio executives, know that they're going to draw in a lot of money, by sort of putting these movies out there and creating sequels because people my age in their late 30s, early 40s want to see these follow-up films. But really specifically, the one movie that stands out to me as having been sort of a good sequel, even much better than I would have expected, and maybe even as good as the original, is Blade Runner 2049. Now, going into that movie, I didn't have a whole lot of expectations, and to be perfectly honest, Blade Runner is not one of my favorite classic movies. I like it. I think it does a lot of interesting things, but the first time I saw it, I didn't love it. I thought it was a little bit overrated. I've watched it many times since then. It's grown on me, and I do like it and enjoy it. I don't love it in the same way that I like things like Alien, right, or Back to the Future, but it's got a little bit of nostalgia associated with it for me. It's an older Harrison Ford movie. It's an older Ridley Scott movie. But when Blade Runner 2049 came out, I was sort of thinking, well, this might be okay, but we'll just sort of see how it pans out. But it ended up being absolutely amazing. In a lot of ways, personally, I think it's actually better than the original. I don't want to say that definitively because obviously there's a lot of different things that can be sort of looked at and debated there in regards to it. But it's a good example of a sequel that did things right? It wasn't rushed. It was sort of a long gestating thing. It was put together, obviously, with a lot of love and a lot of care and a lot of patience, and we as audiences were rewarded for that. But if you go back to other movies, right, you think about, again, movies that came out in the 80s or 90s and had sequels come out way after that, and think about how that turned out. So let's look at Dumb and Dumber first. There was Dumb and Dumberer, which was sort of a prequel, and that was not good at all, as I recall. It's been a long time since I've seen it. And then you had Dumb and Dumber 2, and that's T.O., therein lies the joke. And it was pretty good. It was okay. It was mostly forgettable. It certainly didn't have the quotability of the original film. So, again, that's one where they kind of whiffed on it a little bit, I think. Then you've got Ghostbusters 2016. Now, you could debate whether or not Ghostbusters 2 was actually a worthy follow-up to Ghostbusters 1. I liked it as a kid. I still think it's funny, mostly because of Bill Murray and his dry humor. I think those two movies pair well together. They're both set in New York. They both do, what you would want them to do in terms of comedy. Maybe, obviously, not as classic as the original, the sequel, that is, that I'm thinking of. But Ghostbusters 2016 that had a totally different cast come in. It's meant to sort of design it for a whole new generation. It was an entertaining movie. I didn't hate it, per se, but I didn't think it was a worthy follow-up to the original film. And again, this is, I think, one of my big hang-ups and one of my big worries about this upcoming movie in particular. It just feels like sort of a cash grab, which I guess that's what movies are ultimately, especially for big, sort of nostalgic blockbusters like that. If Ghostbusters could be considered a blockbuster, I'm not really sure at the time if it was. But anyway, certainly it took the world by storm and had its own cartoon, and kids loved it. I was one of those kids, but you just wonder, is it going to live up to the hype? I think, again, and I've talked about this in the recent Ghostbusters video that I made, that Jason Reitman certainly is going to do the best he can with it, given that his dad directed the original film. I'm sure he wants it to be great, but if you look at the track records of movies that come out years later, oftentimes the result is not all that great. Even the Alien films, right? After Aliens, you get Alien 3, and again, that wasn't really a huge gap between Aliens and Alien 3 time-wise. I personally don't think Alien 3 is all that great. I know that's a hotly debated thing in science fiction. A lot of people love Alien 3. I just think it's a very bland-looking, aesthetically film. I don't love the way the story is set up, per se. I don't like the fact that Michael Bihn's character, whose name is eluding me at the moment, and I can't believe that because Aliens is one of my favorite movies. But anyway, Alien 3 to me was not that great. Alien Resurrection was it was okay. It was kind of a fun, campy type movie. It was really sort of a bizarre alien entry. The Alien versus Predator films are not very good. I think Alien versus Predator, the first one, is okay. I don't hate it. It is entertaining. Alien versus Predator Requiem is awful, mostly because you can't see what's going on. It's one of the darkest films I've ever seen, and I mean that literally. The way they filmed it and set it up, there's no light. You can't tell what's happening in the movie, and that's a problem. Star Wars is a little dicier. To me, Star Wars is sort of this standalone, encapsulated thing, and it's hard to really judge, those movies because they sort of operate in their own universe. Now, I did a video recently where I ranked all the Star Wars movies from favorite to least favorite. I think the sequels that came out over the past, 5 or 6 years, I believe 2015 is when The Force Awakens came out. Then you had Last Jedi, then Rise of Skywalker. I think all of those are mostly good. I think Force Awakens is the best one since Empire Strikes Back, personally. I know that's blasphemy. A lot of people love Return of the Jedi. I really like it a lot too, but I think Force Awakens does some really great stuff. I enjoyed Last Jedi. Rise of Skywalker was pretty good. Maybe not great, but good enough and mostly entertaining. But I think on the whole, those are better than the prequels. But again, Star Wars is sort of a niche kind of rogue thing, I guess. I mean, obviously they're blockbuster movies, but it's hard to compare them to anything else because they all sort of operate within their own little scheme, if you will. But again, the question remains, is it even possible to capture that nostalgic light in a bottle? I think it's possible. I just think it's extraordinarily difficult, and I'm always worried when we've got these types of movies on the horizon that it's going to ultimately be a swing and a miss. Now, with Indiana Jones, I do have a lot of hope. I think that James Mangold directing it, though, at first when I saw that, I, again, thought that was heretical, right? I mean, Steven Spielberg is Indiana Jones as far as, the look of those movies go, the cinematography, the overall feel. But the fact that John Williams is doing the music, the fact that Spielberg, wanted to take a step away from this and, let someone else kind of take the reins on it, and the fact that they've made some really interesting casting decisions lately, and that people have really talked up the script, which, I mean, of course, what else would they be doing? But I've got a lot of hope with that one. I don't know that it's going to be as good as Raiders. I think that's impossible, probably. That's my favorite movie of all time, so I just don't see that being a thing. But I think it could be good. Again, with Ghostbusters, I feel like there's a 50-50 shot with that one being good. Mostly because what I want out of that movie is the original Ghostbusters, or are the original Ghostbusters doing original Ghostbusters things, being funny, cracking jokes, but also sort of that legit horror element involved with it. I think the original Ghostbusters are going to be in it. That's clear based on the cast listing and everything that's been sort of disseminated on the internet, but the question is how much, right? And so how big of a part will they have in that? But anyway, this is kind of a rambly video, one of these videos that I like to just sort of spitball a little bit and see what you all think. I mean, is it even possible, with the exception of something like Blade Runner 2049, to make a worthy follow-up to a classic movie, a decade or two after it came out? I think it's very difficult, and if it doesn't work, it doesn't work, and to me that doesn't take anything away from the original offering, but you just, as someone who loves movies, you start to get high hopes about these things, and you want to see them do well. But let me know what you think. Is it possible? Is it more than likely going to be the sort of thing that we see as we move forward and get additional sequels to popular franchises maybe that aren't going to be all that great? Let me know what you think in the comments below. And as always, thanks for watching.